I was parked behind the hospital again, windows cracked just enough to keep the fog from clinging to the glass. My scrubs still smelled like bleach and cafeteria coffee. I'd worked a double shift and my spine felt like it had folded in half, but I couldn't bring myself to recline the seat. Sleeping in my car was a decision I kept pretending was temporary. I didn't even flinch when my phone lit up Mom because I thought maybe she was calling to check on me for once. Instead, I heard her sob before she even said hello. "Mira, we're going to lose the house." I didn't speak. I let the silence stretch, waiting for the rest of the story. I'd been down this road with her before. Crisis apology, a promise to do better. Then another mess. Your father. He made some bad decisions. It's bad this time. 350,000. 350. My voice barely rose above a whisper. "Dollars," she said. "They're foreclosing next month." I leaned my head back against the seat. That house hadn't felt like mine in years, not since high school, not since Owen started skipping school and crashing into things and still got tucked into bed like a saint. But still, that house was the front porch where I'd carved my initials into the railing with a fork, the stairs I used to sit on Christmas mornings waiting for permission to open one gift. "What happened to Grandpa's inheritance?" I asked. There was a pause. Then we gave it to Owen, to help with his startup. It's been a hard year for him. Of course it had. I stared at the ceiling of the car until the light from the street lamp blurred my vision. Every dollar I had was supposed to get me back on my feet. An apartment, a couch that wasn't someone else's. Instead, I found myself scribbling numbers on the back of a parking receipt, calculating what I could pull from savings, how much of a loan I could get approved for without crashing my own credit. "You're all we've got left," she said. I didn't respond. The next morning, I walked into a bank with a manila envelope and walked out with less than I'd ever had. A week later, I handed my parents a folder of cashier's checks. My mother fell to her knees. My father clutched my shoulder like he'd just remembered I existed. "You saved us," he whispered. "You're our hero." I almost believed him. I stayed at their house that night, though I barely slept. The living room looked the same as it always had, photos of Owen on every surface, football trophies polished and centered like family relics. Not a single picture of me past the age of 12. In the morning, over burnt toast and instant coffee, I asked it plain. "What happened to the money Grandpa left you?" They both stiffened just slightly. My mother looked at my father, then back at her mug. "We used it to help Owen get back on his feet," she said, like she was repeating a rehearsed line. "His business needed a little push." I didn't ask what business. I already knew it had failed, like the last one, and the one before that. I stared at the crumb-covered countertop, thinking about the year I'd worked overtime to buy my own nursing textbooks while Owen got bailed out of a DUI by borrowing from their retirement fund. He was struggling, my father added, not quite looking at me. "You know how hard it's been." I nodded slowly. I knew what it was like to be 14 and grounded for missing curfew while Owen snuck in drunk and was told boys will be boys. I knew what it was like to sit through dinners where every story was about his baseball games, his girlfriends, his plans, while I passed the potatoes and pretended not to exist. I knew the way they flinched when I asked for help, the way they jumped when he needed saving. And yet, when I heard them say they might lose the house, I moved anyway. In the days that followed, I drained my savings down to cents, maxed out one credit card, opened a second, sat through a loan officer's lecture about borrowing responsibly while my palms sweated through my sleeves. I wired the money in 3 batches to avoid red flags. Every click of confirmation felt like another piece of me dissolving. The day the payment cleared, I called my parents. "It's done," I said. I didn't expect tears, but I got them. I didn't expect the social media post either, a photo of the front porch with a caption that said "family above all," like I'd always been part of that slogan. The next morning they invited me over for dinner. My father grilled steak. My mother made peach cobbler. We ate on the back deck like nothing had ever been broken. They toasted to me with cheap wine and called me their miracle. I lifted my glass, smiled, and pretended not to see the 2 plane tickets tucked beneath a stack of mail on the kitchen counter. The manila envelope was heavier than it should have been. just a stack of receipts, confirmation letters, notarized forms. But holding it felt like holding the weight of my last 5 years, every shift, every skipped vacation, every quiet sacrifice I never told anyone about. I walked up the porch steps and knocked, even though I had a key. My mother opened the door before I could knock again. Her eyes were red, but her lipstick was fresh. "Oh, sweetie," she breathed. "Come in." I handed the envelope to my father. He didn't open it. He looked at me, his eyes flicking between mine like he was trying to memorize something. Then, without warning, he pulled me into a hug. It stunned me so much I didn't move. His arms wrapped around me tight. I hadn't felt that since I was a kid, before the silence, before the distance, before Owen became everything. "You're our girl," he said. "You saved us." My mother nodded, eyes brimming. "You're an angel, Mira. Truly." I stood in that foyer between the two of them, feeling something like warmth and something else like danger. They asked me to stay for dinner again. We took a photo, me between them, my mom's hand on my shoulder, my dad still holding the envelope like it was sacred. That night, they posted the photo to Facebook with a caption that read, "When your daughter is your guardian angel." The comments poured in. People I hadn't heard from in years messaged me to say how proud they were, how lucky my parents were to have me, how I was an inspiration, and for a few brief hours I let myself believe it. That maybe things were changing, that maybe this was a turning point, that maybe I wasn't invisible anymore. After dinner, my father walked me to the door and pressed the envelope back into my hands. "Keep it," he said. "Proof of what you did. You'll want to remember this." I nodded and tucked it under my arm. As I walked to my car, the porch light flicked on behind me, casting my shadow long across the grass. I didn't see him wave. I wasn't looking back. The sun was just starting to rise when I pulled into the neighborhood. Pine shadows stretched across the street like long fingers, and dew clung to the edges of every mailbox. I was too tired to think, too tired to feel anything but the ache behind my eyes and the sting in my knees from a 12-hour shift on hard tile floors. I turned the corner and slowed. Something was wrong. The driveway was empty. No cars, no bikes, not even the rusted lawn chairs that usually leaned against the siding. I pulled up to the curb and stepped out. The flower beds were ripped up dirt, scattered like someone had been in a hurry. The curtains in the front windows were gone. Not drawn gone. I climbed the porch steps already knowing. My key slid into the lock too easily. Inside, the house was gutted. The framed photos were off the walls. The living room rug rolled and missing. Even the cheap brass lamp from the corner was gone. And on the floor in the center of the bare hardwood was a white envelope. My name, just Mira, scrawled across the front in rushed, blocky pen. I picked it up, opened it with steady fingers. "Thanks for clearing it. We didn't want to live with a loser. Don't call." No signature, no apology, just that. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I folded the note back in half, sat down on the floor, and let the silence press against my shoulders. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just let the truth settle. This wasn't a surprise. It was a confirmation. A cruel kind of clarity I'd been avoiding for years. They hadn't changed. They never would. I stood, tucked the letter into my jacket pocket, and stepped outside. Neighbors were walking dogs, sipping coffee, waving like everything was normal. I nodded back, smiled even. Because what they didn't know, what my parents didn't know, was that when I handed over that envelope of cashier's checks, I also handed the county clerk a different one. One with a deed transfer form inside. Quiet, legal, notarized. They sold the house. But it wasn't theirs to sell. 2 weeks earlier, I sat across from them at the kitchen table, a stack of papers between us and a ballpoint pen warming in my palm. "It's just refinancing paperwork," I said, steady neutral. "Helps clean up the title and lowers the interest on what's left of the lien. I'll handle the rest with the bank." My mother skimmed the pages, barely glancing at the lines before signing. My father cracked a joke about trusting me with more paperwork than he'd trusted any lawyer. Then, he signed to his name bold and rushed across each page. I'd triple-checked every line beforehand. The deed transfer was tucked neatly into the packet buried between 2 generic disclosure forms. filed under the same case number notarized the next day. No tricks, just precision, just the law. The clerk at the county office had raised an eyebrow. Putting the title solely in your name, I nodded. I'm covering the full balance, just making sure the records reflect that. Now, standing in the empty living room, I took out my phone and dialed the title office again. Hi, this is Mira Lowell. I just need confirmation the title transfer went through. Give me one moment, the woman said. I listened to the tapping of keys, a printer in the background, the hum of someone pulling up proof. Yes, Ms. Lowell. The transfer was processed and filed 2 weeks ago. You are the sole legal owner. Thank you, I said quietly. They had left the house with furniture photos, every trace of sentiment, but not the one thing they thought they had taken. I walked out to the porch phone, still warm in my hand, and stared out at the quiet street. The sky was softening to daylight. A few early joggers passed oblivious. I took a breath. They thought they'd erased me, but I was still here. I owned every inch of what they tried to steal, and they were about to find out. I spent the next hour printing documents, the deed transfer, the payment receipts, the notarized pages with both their signatures, every sheet stacked, labeled time-stamped. I slid everything into a clean folder, clipped the edges, and walked it down to the buyer's real estate office. The agent blinked at me from behind her desk. They didn't own the home, she asked, voice tight. They hadn't for 2 weeks, I said, sliding the papers across. The title is in my name. They had no legal right to sell. Within 2 hours, the deal was frozen. I filed a fraud report with the sheriff's office, then stopped by a locksmith on the way home. The locks were changed by sundown. I made myself a cup of coffee while the phone lit up over and over. First, a missed call from a Florida number. Then another. Then one from Owen. I didn't answer. I let the voicemail roll. Are you serious right now? Owen's voice cracked. They're freaking out. Mom's having chest pains, Dad's yelling at everybody. You're really gonna do this after everything they've done for you? I played it on speaker while I stirred cream into my mug. Another call. Another voicemail. This time it was Dad. Short. Clipped. You've made your point. You can stop acting like this now. Acting. As if this was a performance. As if his betrayal had been a minor inconvenience. I didn't reply. I sat at the kitchen table, feet curled under me, and listened to every word like background noise. I let it play while I watered the plant on the windowsill and folded a towel. Then I opened a new text thread and typed one line, per NC law, the home is mine. The sale is void. I've changed the locks. I hit send and turned the phone face down. 3 hours passed. No reply. Just the kind of silence I'd never known how to ask for. The kind that wasn't cold, wasn't angry, just final. I stood in the hallway that night, the old wood floor cool beneath my feet, and let the quiet hold me. I packed the box carefully. Not out of sentiment, but because I didn't want any excuses. No broken glass, no damaged edges. Just a clean handoff. My mother's wedding album. Owen's old trophies. A stack of tax forms my father never filed. A shoebox labeled important. I didn't bother opening it. I taped the lid shut, wrote their last name in black marker, and carried it to the car. Uncle Reed lived 20 minutes out in the foothills past the gas station that sold expired milk and the diner with the flickering neon sign. I hadn't seen him in years, but I knew they'd end up there. He was the only one in the family still gullible enough to open his door for them. When I pulled into the gravel drive, the porch light was already on. Reed opened the door as I stepped out, rubbing his arms like he wasn't sure how to greet me. I figured you'd come, he said quietly. I didn't respond. I just set the box down on the edge of the porch, careful not to let it thud. Behind him, I saw them. My mother, thinner than I remembered, hair pulled back in a messy knot. My father, sunken eyes, arms crossed. And Owen sitting on the floor in sweats, scrolling his phone like the screen could fix any of this. No one spoke until Owen stood. Mira, he said, voice small. What are we supposed to do now? I looked at him and didn't feel rage, just distance, like the string that had always tied us had finally snapped. You left me in a parking lot 5 years ago, I said. Figure it out. My mother opened her mouth, but no sound came out. My father looked away. I nodded once at Uncle Reed and turned back toward the car. The night air was cool, the sky clear. Gravel shifted under my steps. No one called after me. No one followed. I drove home with the windows down and the radio off. When I got back, the porch light was still on, and for the first time, it felt like mine. I started with the hallway. The pencil marks were still there, my height scribbled in crooked lines and my mother's cursive. I stood in front of them for a long time, paint roller in hand, remembering the version of me who used to beg for those marks to be updated as if proof of growth might earn someone's attention. Then I dipped the roller into the tray and covered them in soft blue. Next was the office. My father's old space, the one I was never allowed to enter. I boxed up his binders and loose receipts, cleared the desk, and pushed it out onto the curb. By the end of the week, it was a studio. Clean, bright. Mine. I pulled the group chat into my screen one last time, Mom, Dad, Owen, me. Scrolled through months of one-sided requests, half-hearted updates, guilt woven into every message. Then I tapped Leave Conversation. A few minutes later, I changed my number. There was no announcement, no ceremony, just silence. That night, I sat cross-legged in the middle of the living room candle flickering on the coffee table, a blanket wrapped around my shoulders. No one knew where I was. No one was asking. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone. I felt free. I leaned back and let the stillness stretch. No buzzing phone. No footsteps overhead. No voices telling me what I owed them. Only my breath steady and quiet. Tomorrow, I'd start taking orders for my studio. I'd set up the shelves, maybe even hang something on the wall. But tonight, I just rested. And somewhere between the quiet and the candlelight, I realized this house didn't carry their shadows anymore. The subject line just said, I know everything and I'm sorry. It had been weeks since I'd thought about Claire, really thought about her. She was always a background figure, polite, quiet, the type who kept her hands folded while the rest of them shouted. I clicked it open more out of habit than interest. She told me she'd left Owen, said the Florida dream crumbled within days, that my parents treated her like unpaid help, cooking, cleaning, smiling through every awkward dinner while they bragged about their fresh start. She said the leftover money was gone before they even unpacked, poured into beachside cocktails and glossy cruise brochures. Then she found the letter. The one my father left behind. Thanks for clearing it. We didn't want to live with a loser. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't try to defend them. She just told the truth. I thought Evan was different, she wrote, but he's just your father with a younger face. And you're the only one who ever had integrity. I see that now. I'm sorry it took me so long. She ended it simply. If you ever want to talk woman to woman, I'm here. I stared at the screen for a long time. Didn't reply, didn't delete it either. Instead, I let it sit there unread, but read, unopened, but fully felt. Not because I needed her apology, but because it was the first time someone from their world had chosen honesty over loyalty. That meant something. Not enough to open the door, but enough to leave the porch light on. It had been a quiet morning, the kind where nothing urgent pressed at my heels, where I moved slow on purpose just to feel the stillness stretch. I took the long route home from the post office, cutting through the square where the fountain always ran too loud. That's when I saw him. A man hunched on the bench coat, zipped up to his chin, shoulders caved in. For a second, my breath caught. The shape of him, the way he held his head, it looked like my father. I stopped walking. It wasn't him. But the resemblance was enough to bring something hollow to the surface. Not pity, not fear. Just the cold reminder of how close some choices live to the edge. I kept walking, didn't look back. That night, I lit a candle in the hallway. The same hallway where I used to press my back to the wall during their fights, knees drawn up, breathing like it was something I had to earn. The flame flickered steady and small. I did the right thing, I said aloud. No one answered. No one needed to. The house stayed still, wrapped in its own quiet. And this time, so did I.